From 1984, it's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, this was the first sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's actually a prequel because the events take place before what happens in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was very successful. It did get some critical backlash and audiences got upset, and actually it wound up changing the movie ratings system. This film and Gremlins together kind of spurred the creation of the PG-13 rating because the content, while it wasn't quite an R rating, it was certainly beyond a PG. And so they created the PG-13 rating. Now, because of that, this is the only Indiana Jones film that you hadn't seen, and I purposely didn't want you to watch it until you were closer to 13, and still I censored a little bit of it for you. But I think you could follow the storyline.
I could. I have been excited to watch this movie for a while now, and I think it lived up to my excitement because out of the three that I had previously watched, Last Crusade has always been my favorite. I still think that Last Crusade will be my favorite, but it's with Temple of Doom. And I think Last Crusade is my favorite because that was the first one I ever saw with you.
And you got to see it in the movie theater, which was pretty cool. I think it's pretty much established. Most people feel that Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best crafted film, the best story, and it really is. It's almost a perfect film. But that doesn't mean that Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom or Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade aren't just as enjoyable to sit through and watch. I found Temple of Doom to be right up there with Raiders for me when I was a kid. I got to go see it with your grandfather. He rarely went to movies, but he liked Indiana Jones. So we saw this on opening weekend, which never happened. And I really liked it a lot. There were things in it that I didn't quite love about it, certainly. It was more violent than it needed to be, but I still love the character of Indiana Jones. I love that far side of the world setting. I like that it went in different places, in different directions than Raiders of the Lost Ark had. When we go to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, he kind of goes back to the Nazi storyline. Of course, that takes place after Raiders, and this was before. So there's a lot of stuff in here, though, that's a lot of fun, a lot of great set pieces.
Yes, and my biggest thing about this, the thing that I think I liked kind of the most was that it felt like I was there and I couldn't lay back on my seat. I was on the edge of my seat. You were there watching and I was like, is he going to be okay? And honestly, I think they could make a theme park ride out of maybe the mine trains. I thought that would be a cool ride.
You know, that's a good point. There is an Indiana Jones ride. It's at Disneyland in California. There might be one in one of the European or the Asian parks. I'm not sure. But I've been on that ride, and it's good. But I always felt like they missed an opportunity because that mine car chase is definitely a roller coaster. And they could make one, and it would be a great setting, I think. So I agree with that.
Yes. Overall, I just really liked the movie, and I'm not really sure why. I think you're right. I think it's because of the enjoyment, and there was so much activity, I think. I liked it a lot.
Well, there's a lot of shout-outs and a lot of different things in it. It's a very different film than Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, we start out and he's in this tuxedo, and he looks very much like James Bond, which is ironic for a couple of reasons. In the next film, Sean Connery, the original film version of James Bond, would play his father. But this goes back before that because Steven Spielberg had always wanted to make a James Bond film. And they wouldn't give an American director that job at the time. And he was talking to George Lucas about it, and George Lucas said, I've got something better. It's this archaeologist adventurer, and that's where Indiana Jones came from. George Lucas had this idea, and he sold Steven Spielberg on it as a variation on James Bond in some ways. So then for the third film, they go out and they get James Bond to play Indiana Jones's father, which is pretty cool. So at the beginning of the film, he definitely looks like James Bond in that tuxedo. Then, you know, they're in the club, and the club is Club Obi-Wan, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
And there's various different things that we see throughout the film that are shout-outs. But it also has some different aspects than Raiders. The heroine is different. Marion Ravenwood she would stand toe-to-toe and slug you right across the jaw. But Willie Scott is different. She's more of the traditional damsel in distress from those Saturday morning serials upon which this is based. She's not completely helpless, I don't think.
No, I still feel like she has action in her. She's different for some reason. She's different than a damsel in distress.
I agree, because she would actually slug you too. She just didn't like bugs in things, which, and you know, she was a singer and she was worried about her appearance. She adds a different dimension to it. I really like her character. I thought Kate Capshaw was great in the part. I've always liked her. I felt like after she married Steven Spielberg, she really didn't do that much. She kind of let her career go, and I think it's a shame because I would have liked to have seen what she would have done in the future. The other piece here is Short Round, Indiana Jones's sidekick. And whereas a lot of times, even as a kid, and I'm saying this, when I was a kid watching this, I didn't like kids in films, like especially science fiction. I thought Star Wars did that right with the original films. There was no kid in that. You look at Star Trek The Next Generation, there's a kid. You look at Battlestar Galactica, there's a kid. They always felt like they had to include a kid for kids to identify with. But don't think they got us as kids. As a kid, I identified with Han Solo. I wanted to be him. I didn't want to be another kid. I was already a kid, right? However, Short Round, I liked. I thought he was a good sidekick. I thought he had a good relationship with Indy. You could feel like there was a huge backstory between them that we didn't know about, but they had already established it. There was a bond there between Indy and Short Round. And I really liked him.
Yes, me too. And that was kind of surprising for me because when I first saw that there was a kid in here, I was like, oh boy. But then after a while, I thought he was very funny, and I think he was in it just enough that it worked. And when he was in it, he was Indiana Jones equal, but not quite. He was an equal in different ways.
They respected each other, and there's a big part of the plot where Indy sort of betrays him, not on purpose, because he had drunk the blood of Kali and he was out of his mind. That was all a little bit weird for me when I was a kid, I gotta be honest. But he kind of betrayed Short Round, and you could tell that it hurt both of them. And there was, when they hand each other their hats, he puts the baseball cap on Short Round and Short Round hands him his fedora, and they kind of restore that bond, and they understand what happened. I thought it worked. It worked for me anyway. So I liked Short Round. I kind of wish they had brought him back. I know they wanted to set up this story with Indiana Jones's son in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It might have been nice to have Short Round come back because he was already a father figure to Short Round in many ways. Maybe he'll come back in the next film. We don't know exactly what they're doing. I haven't heard that that's going to happen. I think a lot of people would like that, which is unique, again, with a child character being liked and wanted back. So you don't usually see that in these franchise films. Nobody wants Boxy to come back in Battlestar Galactica, for the most part, right?
Yes. I also want to mention, because you said there was a part with the blood, and that was kind of weird. I think that it being scary a little bit is different. Now, you couldn't really censor the part with the bugs, and I didn't really mind it. I don't like bugs. And you could tell on her face that she was scared. I think the scariest part for me was when Short Round leans against the wall. He pushes a button, the spikes come down, and then Indy tells her to push the button over here. And
he's telling Willie she needs to get the lever.
And he puts his hand out. And for some reason it scared me. I screamed.
You screamed the same exact scream at the same exact time that Willie Scott screamed in the movie.
Yes.
And it was hilarious. Like, it was so funny to me because I knew it was coming. I've seen the film multiple times. That never, I guess maybe originally in the theater it might have startled me, but you screamed the exact same tone of scream and timing of scream that Kate Capshaw did in the film, and I loved it. It made that viewing of the movie for me because you enjoyed it so much.
I think
because then you started laughing at yourself.
Yes, because I think that says something about the movie. Usually, I won't like scarier movies. I haven't seen really scary movies, but this, it was kind of scary or creepy, and I liked it.
The biggest thing. Certainly I knew I was going to censor certain parts of the film because, again, I don't think they're appropriate. But my biggest hesitation in showing you this was you do not like bugs at all. And I was afraid if you saw this film, you might not like Indiana Jones anymore because bugs are a big part of it. But you seem to really enjoy the bug part, which I thought was hilarious. And I did think it was funny when you screamed and his hand came out of the thing. So, you know, this, like I said, this had a lot of big set pieces. The mine car, I thought it was hilarious when his foot's on fire and he's saying, water, water. Mm-hmm. And then he looks up and he says, water. I mean, it's great comedic timing. I remember laughing out loud in the theater when I saw that the first time. And I feel like the last third of the film, it's at a breakneck pace, you know, leading up to the scene on the bridge, which I also thought was very good.
Yes, I agree. I don't think there's one part in here that I didn't like, but you did censor it for me, so I think maybe the censored parts I wouldn't like. But from what I saw, I didn't not like anything.
I think this one is the most probably like a theme park ride, because what they had done is there were certain things they had planned to use in the first movie, and the minecart chase was one of those things, as I understand it. And they didn't make it in the first movie. So they found a way to work all these great stunts and great set pieces into this film. And they fit with the storyline, but there's a lot of them, right? So, I mean, we're going at a pretty breakneck pace here in that last third of the film, but I enjoy it for that reason. And it's a departure. It's different than the two films that surround it. And of course, Crystal Skull was made so many years later. That's a very different film to assess, and we've talked about that. But this one is unique and it's different, and for that reason, a lot of people feel it's the worst of the Indiana Jones films, or at least the original three. I've never felt that way. I always enjoyed it. Maybe it's because I went with your grandfather on opening weekend. I just loved Indiana Jones, and I thought this let his character kind of explore new territory, not just in the physical world, but with the character. And I like that, and I love that setting. I even like the vampire bats because it's creepy. It goes with what you were saying about the bugs.
Yes. I liked the entire movie. I thought that the creepy part made it more fun, and I really liked Indiana Jones in this one.
And of course, for you, it didn't hurt that it included elephants, and a baby elephant at that, so you loved that.
Yes.
All right. Well, for me, this has always been one to see. I realize it's not up to the same caliber as Raiders of the Lost Ark as far as art may be concerned, but for the enjoyment factor, for me, it's definitely one to see.
One to see here too. I think that it says something because Last Crusade has always been my favorite, and it's really high up there on the list of my favorite movies. And Temple of Doom is with it.
Agreed. And you only have to look over my left shoulder to see that I really do enjoy Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Fortune and glory.
See what I did there?
Oh, Daddy.